your environment is always communicating something to you. So how can you intentionally clean up those signals and make sure they're communicating those good positive vibe signals that you want to be communicating to get the results you want to get? Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. There's a famous theory in criminology that one broken window leads to more broken windows. It's called the broken windows theory. And this was actually created just as recently as 1982 by Wilson and Kelling. Wilson was a political scientist and Kelling was a criminologist and researcher. And so their goal at the time was to research how to decrease crime in areas where crime was higher. And the broken windows theory just basically indicates that visible disorder signals to other people that the norms aren't applied here, that the standard behavioral rules don't apply, that nobody's following them, and it gives them permission to let their own behavioral standards slip. So broken windows lead to more broken windows, not because the window is shattering and the glass is breaking other windows or some chain reaction, but because of the behavioral cues that it sends to other people in that area that broken windows are acceptable here. Now, I have to say, on a criminology and policing front, this was really contested. It became quite a controversial topic, especially in the early 90s, because it started changing the way that policing was done, mainly in New York in the early 90s. And they started cracking down on, it was like that no tolerance rule, right? Like there's no tolerance in smaller crimes because smaller crimes indicate through these behavioral social cues that crimes are okay and they lead to bigger crimes. And there were tons of studies on the policing efforts in general that showed that that was actually not the case, and it led to more problems than it did solutions. Northeastern University reviewed nearly 300 different studies and found that neighborhood disorder does not reliably cause residents to commit more crimes. It led to this aggressive zero tolerance policing effort that tended to disproportionately target low income and communities of color. Even in a federal relocation study where they took criminals from disorderly neighborhoods and moved them to areas that were orderly, those people still committed crimes at roughly the same rate. So the contested part was the policing application, cracking down on minor infractions to prevent serious crimes. But the uncontested part is the behavioral psychology, that environmental signals influence individual behavior. For example, the University of Groningen published 6 field experiments in real public places. In one, they put these flyers on bike handles and found that 30% in a tidy parking lot would litter these flyers that they had placed on their bikes, whereas 58% would litter in a chaotic or disorderly parking lot. 33% littered in a clean alley versus 69% when graffiti was added, and 13% stole a visible envelope of cash from a mailbox when the mailbox looked clean versus 27% when it was covered in graffiti. Now, the University of Chicago, published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, wanted to isolate exactly which visual features drove the perception of disorder. And they found that spatial features like non-straight edges, asymmetry, this could be things that are broken and hanging, led more to those negative behaviors than things like saturation and color when it came to visual disturbances. Even more than a mess, disorder and disorganization itself is communicating something to your brain that influences your behavior even below conscious awareness. And probably the place that this is most evident is, of course, our home environments. So have you ever found yourself asking your kids, or maybe your parents asked you this when you were growing up, you never do that at a friend's house. Why would you do that here? Or you would never do that at your grandma's house. Why do you think that it's okay for you to do here? Or even on a more like clutter or messy related topic, I have a 3-year-old and she has a lot of building toys. So she's got these magnets that she can build all of these things with. And then she's got these tinker toys that come with different wooden shapes so that she can put them together and make different creations. And when she plays with those things, they inevitably have some period of time where they get left out on the floor before I finally give in and go pick them all up or stand over her while she picks them all up. If I let those tinker toys or those magnets just hang out on the floor for a day or even a half day, Other things from other members of the family will inevitably end up there too. Somebody is going to change their shirt and leave their previous shirt like on the floor right next to the Tinker Toys or magnets. Somebody is going to drop something. Like there will be other items, not just from the toddler, but from different people in the household around that area. And I'm not totally innocent here. It's definitely been my things before, like my house shoes or something that I take off for some reason and find them later that right next to the magnets or the Tinker Toys. A lot of it is very similar to mob mentality too. When you see other people actively doing something that cues to you that it's okay, even if you wouldn't normally do it. So you have large groups of people doing things that they wouldn't normally do on their own, but because this mob mentality, this groupthink says that it's okay to do it, they do it. Well, your environment can send similar cues even with no other people being present. So that's what this broken windows theory is all about. But it's not all doom and gloom because the spiral can work both ways. You know, a space that's made to be orderly cues other people to respond by maintaining them. In a 2016 Philadelphia study, rather than approaching this whole criminology thing from a stance of crackdown, they tried restoring abandoned homes and vacant lots in high crime areas. And that resulted in a 39% drop in gun violence. So positive action led to more positive action. So if you just took that information away, if you just wanted to use that for your own personal environment, your home environment, what might that look like? Well, if the zero tolerance wasn't super effective, or if you feel like on your own environment level, you're constantly running around like nagging, getting frustrated, screaming at people, what if we took a more positive, proactive approach? Maybe remove anything that doesn't belong in a room entirely, like start from zero. So if your dining room has things that are piled up on the shelves, like, old placemats that you don't use anymore with maybe a basket of mail stacked on top of that, and, like all of this different stuff that's on shelves all around, even if you tell people over and over again, stop setting your junk on the table or stop setting your junk on the shelves, well, the disorder is already signaling more powerfully than anything you could ever say. Another way that you could clean up some of your signals is to just give everything a home, to make sure that everything that you are storing is in its appropriate home and that it already has some kind of a location that it belongs to. Because the reason that clutter, for example, accumulates in general is that there's no obvious place for something to live. And when things don't have a place, they kind of end up wherever. And then that becomes the signal to future people or family members to place things in random places because there is no organization or order. Another thing is to make the right behavior the easiest behavior inside of your environment. This is something I talked a lot about when I talk about habits. Of course, the book Atomic Habits talks a lot about reducing friction and daily decision making to make your habits, the positive habits that you want to be following, easier to follow through with. So when it comes to this broken windows theory and reducing the number of, quote, broken windows that people see that they're contributing to by being in that environment, you can make that first broken window much less likely to occur by making the right behavior the easiest behavior. So for example, maybe your broken window is that people place their backpacks right at the entryway. Every day they come in, they block up the front door by placing all their bags right there. You could create another easier behavior, like maybe a rack that's near the front door that people could easily hang their backpacks on, for example, that would keep that first backpack, that first broken window from landing right there at the front door, which is going to cue to everybody else who walks in the front door to put their backpacks on the rack. Another way that you could clean up your signals inside of your own environment is on a more routine basis by creating a reset ritual instead of just a cleaning routine. I mean, cleaning routines are good too. There are certain things that you need to occasionally clean, like a ceiling fan or blinds, but on a more regular throughout the day basis, just having resets, like for example with Chloe and her magnets or Tinker Toys, that's not necessarily a big cleaning project that I need to do, but it is a reset that needs to happen because I already know that the longer all of these little building pieces lay sprinkled on the floor, the more stuff I'm going to have that's naturally been added to it as the hours go on, right? So creating that reset ritual at various points or after various activities can help to reduce those signals in a space. Not only that, but cleaning, just the terminology and the way that we use it, implies catching up. I got to clean up. Things are messy. Now we have to go clean up. It implies this whole catch up thing. Reset implies maintaining a baseline. And that doesn't feel like such a heavy lift. And also, it implies something that is going to be ongoing. It's going to be a little more of an organic process, and also shouldn't take as much time, right? Because you are doing it more regularly to maintain that baseline. And another thing that can be done to kind of fix the signals inside of your own environment is to make sure everyone in the household is involved. I talk a lot about systems and how important systems are, not only for keeping things moving. I like to compare systems to like this engine of how things work that just keeps things functioning in the background without requiring so much energy and effort. But a big part of systems is that it keeps everybody on the same page because everybody knows what their role is, everybody knows what to expect, and that's the case regardless, again, of what situation you're talking about. It could be the case at work, it could be the case in a group sport that you're in, it could be the case at your home, and it's really impactful when you use it right there in your home environment. But one thing this research on this broken windows theory is clear about is that disorder spreads socially. So it is important that everybody is involved in the process of maintaining those signals and that everybody knows what's going on. So like if you just run in that dining room example, everybody's gotten used to sitting their junk or whatever in the dining room on the shelves because they're used to seeing all of these piles, and now you've cleared those piles out. Yeah, the signals might change, but the habits are also still there. So it's important to let people know, hey, look at this. I've created a new system. I've moved all of the junk out of here, and this is how it's going to stay. And now everybody's involved in the process inside of that space. Basically, your environment is always communicating something to you. So how can you intentionally clean up those signals and make sure they're communicating those good positive vibe signals that you want to be communicating to get the results you want to get? And if you're curious kind of where you fall on this whole clutter and signals inside of your environment thing, you can take my clutter personality quiz, and it'll give you a roadmap based on your results for where you can start focusing your intention next inside of your environment. You can find that at miadanielle.com/clutter-quiz, or I also have it linked down in the description. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a review over on Apple Podcast or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Or if you're over on YouTube, I would love it if you would consider subscribing. I release new episodes every Tuesday. I'll chat with you next week.